The girl never imagined that her mother, who was wearing makeup, was out with another man. Her mother cruelly locked her 5-year-old daughter on the balcony, and the little girl froze to death in the cold weather. Even at the funeral, her mother didn't show any regret. In fact, she felt relieved, thinking that without the burden of her daughter, she could more easily find a new man to marry. However, until her death, the daughter always believed her mother was the kindest person. She kept hoping her mother would come back to unlock the door for her. When Corinne came home from school in the afternoon, she sat in the corner quietly reading her book so as not to disturb her mother, who had just come home and was asleep. But even this was too much for her mother. She angrily picked up an alarm clock and threw it at Corinne. Corinne could only keep apologizing, promising not to make any noise. Yet, her mother didn't let up. She opened the balcony door and threw Corinne outside, locking it behind her. Corinne didn't care about her mother's cruelty. She was more concerned about whether her book had been damaged. She kept wiping it because it was the only gift her mother had ever given her. The snow outside grew heavier. Though Corinne tried to focus on reading, the cold was unbearable. Just then, her mother opened the door. Corinne thought she was being let back inside to warm up, but instead, her mother just scolded her, saying she was a bad child who needed to reflect on her actions outside. She told Corinne not to disturb her while she was out with someone else and locked the door again, leaving Corinne on the increasingly cold balcony. On the TV, there was a report on the dangers of hypothermia in winter. Meanwhile, a female teacher was flipping through a book about child abuse. This morning at school, she noticed a large bruise on Corinne's neck. Corinne pretended it was from a fall, but the teacher felt something was off. She asked Corinne how her mother treated her, but Corinne insisted that her mother was very kind. The teacher still didn't feel right, so she decided to visit Corinne's home the next day. However, she didn't know that Corinne's mother was out, looking beautiful and kissing a man. Meanwhile, poor Corinne, pale and weak, sat on the balcony. Corinne felt hungry and cold, and she was becoming drowsy. But she kept reading the book her mother had given her, trying to stay awake, fearing that if her mother came to get her, she might not notice. However, her rapidly dropping body temperature finally overcame her. Even in her last moments, she still believed her mother was a kind person, convinced her mother would come to get her. But the mother Corinne loved never returned. The only person who cared for her, the teacher, arrived too late. She rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Corinne's soul, holding her book, arrived at a place called the Death Office, a place that receives souls. Here, based on the deceased's life experiences, they are guided to different places for reincarnation. If someone didn't do anything too bad in life, they would usually go to heaven. Corinne should have been able to go to heaven, but she didn't feel she deserved it because she often made her mother angry. She thought of herself as a bad child in her mother's eyes. An old man there told her she had arrived because of the abuse she suffered from her mother, which indirectly led to her death. But Corinne didn't think her mother had hurt her. She kept insisting that her mother was kind, that her mother would often pat her head, buy her delicious bento boxes, and even gave her the book as a gift. Corinne's innocent words made the old man tear up. He dreaded dealing with the souls of children because they often didn't understand why they died. Corinne had died because of her mother's abuse, yet she still believed her mother was a kind person. To help Corinne peacefully move on to the next life, the old man and others created a kind lie, telling Corinne that she would meet her mother again in heaven. Overjoyed, Corinne went to heaven. The old man prayed for her, hoping she would find a kind mother in her next life. At Corinne's funeral, everyone was mourning her death, but her mother was still out with a man, not the least bit sad. She thought that now that Corinne was dead, she could finally marry him. The teacher, hearing this, was furious. She couldn't understand how Corinne could say that her mother was so kind when the truth was so different. Corinne's mother, in her mind, still thought of Corinne as her daughter. The teacher believed